Wonder Woman. Wednesday.
My friends, I've been told that shame and guilt are useless emotions. So, about my unexpected 3-month hiatus, I can only say thank you for your patience. Thank you for following and listening, and thank you for hanging in there. This will all be rewarded, not only with today's fantastic episode, but a special announcement about next month's mind-blowing entry. Be sure and listen till the end when I will reveal what's in store. I guarantee you'll love it. Meanwhile, folks, we are at the end of Season 1, Wonder Woman in Hollywood, and my cosplay guest comes to us all the way from Australia, which means you get to hear me do an interview at 5 a.m. Please send coffee as I try to keep up with the one and only, the fabulous Wonder Mama, right here on Wonder Woman Wednesdays. Steve Trevor and other war heroes start disappearing during the making of a propaganda movie. Are the Nazis behind it? The kidnappers get more than they bargained for when they battle Wonder Woman in Hollywood. Wonder Woman visits Hollywood for the first time. Very exciting. I am talking to the fabulous Wonder Mama, also known as Renny. How's it going?
Known as Renny. Yeah, that's my secret identity.
Excellent. And before we jump into the episode, just tell us, briefly, give us an introduction to who you are and what you do.
Okay, well, I'm Renny. Well, when I'm Renny, I'm a big Wonder Woman fan. I've been a lifelong fan of Wonder Woman for as long as I can remember, since Super Friends and the Linda Carter TV show. So it's exciting to be able to have this discussion today. Wonder Woman in Hollywood is one of my favorite episodes because it's a lot of fun. So I've been a lifelong fan. I'm a collector. I've got a big collection of memorabilia that I keep adding to, even though I shouldn't because I'm running out of space. But and then besides that, I'm the fabulous Wonder Mama, which is my little spin-off of Wonder Woman. I could never look like Linda Carter, nowhere near as skinny or as pretty as her. So I've created Wonder Mama, which is my little spin-off of which is like a cosplay drag character. I call it cos drag. So yeah, it's a little bit of fun and yeah.
Cos drag. I love that.
Yeah.
I have never heard that. Did you make that term up?
I don't think I made it up. I think I saw it somewhere. I think I saw it somewhere online, but it was from overseas, from over in the US actually. I think there was a cosplay meetup during World Pride in New York City in around 2019 when they had all their World Pride events, and it was one of the events that I missed out on going, and I really was upset that I was there too late to be part of it. But anyway, it was just yeah. Awesome.
Well, I'm glad you got to visit New York. I saw in your Instagram. I saw at least. Have you visited more than once, or was that just the one time?
I've been to New York so many times. I've got to stop going. I've got to go somewhere else. I was there in what? When is New York Comic Con? New York Comic Con was in October or November of last year, I think.
Okay.
And I was there for that. So I went for New York Comic Con. So I was in New York for a week there. I went as Wonder Mama for 2 days. I only got 2 days at New York Comic Con, and even then, it's not even enough time to see everything because it's so big compared to the cons that we have in Australia. So yeah, it was amazing.
And forgive me if you said this already. Where are you right now? Where are you located?
Oh, I'm in Sydney, Australia. So I'm all the way down under. So I'm in Sydney, Australia, and yeah.
And that's a long flight to New York.
It's not too bad. It's about 8 hours. Well, it's probably it depends on the flight. I mean, you've got to go. So I went Sydney to Vancouver, Vancouver to New York. So it's probably about 18 hours maybe. Yeah.
Wow. Okay. That's quite a flight.
Yeah.
All right. So speaking of flying to exotic places,
Yes.
Wonder Woman is heading to Hollywood. So
Yes.
let's check it out. So we're gonna go through the episode. I'm gonna try not to. By the way, I whenever I edit my podcast, I
Yeah.
realize how much I say and I think it's
I
terrible.
know that too when I do my videos as well. When I do my Instagram, I'm going I'm like, oh God, I've got to try and stop doing that. Yeah.
I mean that is the biggest part of. I mean that's the biggest time eater is editing
Yeah.
all the ums out of
Oh,
my podcast.
no.
And I should try, I don't know, maybe it bothers me more than other people, or maybe other people are bothered. Who knows? I
Maybe.
so I'm gonna try not to say is my point. But we'll see. We'll see how I do, especially at 5 a.m. All right. So as soon as as soon as the episode starts, the credits roll, and I have to tell you that I've talked about this before. Everybody knows, the beginning of the show. There's that animated sequence where there's a cartoon Wonder Woman, and then she jumps out, and becomes Linda Carter from a
Yeah,
comic book to reality, and that never ceases to move me. I love that. That's one of the key things that I remember from being a kid and watching this, is that this is the comic books come to life. And that's
exactly.
and that's part of the reason they needed to cast somebody like Linda Carter, because she embodied the character so well that you believed that here comes Linda, here comes Wonder Woman out of the pages of a comic book, and suddenly she's real. And
Exactly.
I noticed that again when I was watching this, and I just thought it was wonderful.
Well, I think they also needed to do that because a year before that, they had the Kathy Lee Crosby version, which
That's
was
right.
very un-Wonder Woman-like. And I mean, there's people that like it. There's people that look at it favorably to an extent. But I guess they needed to do something to make it look like this is the real comic book version of Wonder Woman. And
Right.
Linda did it perfectly. So, yeah.
Yeah. And also during the credits. Oh, and by the way, so this was first broadcast February 16th of 1977. And we've spent some time in previous podcasts talking about, the era that was in. And one of the things that I think is significant, just because it comes up as sort of a comparison, is that this is right after the big bicentennial here in the U.S., which was
Right.
we were 200 years old in 1976, and they talk a little bit about they make it the bimillennial celebration on Paradise Island, which I thought
Oh,
was
wow.
uh,
Okay.
yeah, that
I,
was a fun little reference, and I think that's why they did that.
oh, that's great. Yeah.
And so as far as the credits go, director is Bruce Bilson, and
Yeah.
he's a longtime director of TV. He did a lot of Get Smart, Hawaii Five-O, and Barney Miller. So he's got
Okay.
some good directing cred there. And the writer, Jimmy Sangster, apparently helped get Hammer Studios off the ground. He wrote lots of great British horror.
Oh,
Uh,
wow.
yeah, Curse of Frankenstein, Horror of Dracula, Blood of the Vampire, The Crawling Eye, Jack the Ripper, Brides of Dracula, also Maniac, and a TV movie called Scream Pretty Peggy, which
Wow.
I've mentioned before, and I can't remember why. I looked at the personnel in that movie, and somebody there was a guest star on Wonder Woman before, and I thought that was an interesting name for a movie, Scream Pretty Peggy. I'd
Yeah.
never seen it. I do want to see it. And also a movie that's fairly well known here, something in the 80s called The Devil and Max Devlin.
Okay. Wow.
And so he's written a lot of pretty great stuff, mostly horror.
Oh, that's
Uh,
great. I Morris.
and I did like the script, I will tell you. I mean, I
Yes.
love the episode, I'll tell you
Yeah, I think
that. But
so. Yeah.
and so we open up in a screening room, typical Hollywood type screening room, and also I need to point out, my life has been crazy and hectic, recently. And so normally I write out my own synopsis,
Mhm.
but I could not get to it. And there's a wonderful site called Wonderland-site
Yeah.
.com, I believe. And they have great synopses of all these episodes. So I'm reading that word for word here. And
Mhm.
a big thanks to whoever wrote this. I've tried before and I can't really find exactly who wrote these, but anyway, they're pretty good synopses, and so that's what I'm reading here. So producer Max Bremer, played by Harris Yulin, proposes to Major Steve Trevor, who's Lyle Wagner, to participate in a movie about four top American heroes recreating their acts of bravery in the scene, with a purpose to elevate the soldiers' morale, and all the box office receipts will go to buy war bonds. And this is something that I know that they did quite a bit of. If you watch, some of the old American war movies, these were made specifically as propaganda movies. And I think propaganda, the word propaganda sometimes has a really negative connotation. I mean, it's not, there is something slightly negative about it because it's a fairly misleading product that, espouses, a certain kind of, what do I want to say? Patriotism. It gets people riled up for a cause and gets them excited to take action. And in this case, it's to buy war bonds. And
Yeah.
so a lot of our old, war movies are specifically made as propaganda movies.
Yeah.
And I think that's something that the Nazis were famous for. I don't know if it happened much before that, but the Nazis, I think the director was Leni Riefenstahl.
Right.
She specifically was like, was good at making Nazi propaganda films. And
Wow.
and so the US, sort of took that cue and made their own propaganda movies. And
Mhm.
so this is one of them. This is we're getting to see backstage at a American propaganda film. And one of the fun things about this scene is how excited Etta Candy gets when, because when they finish watching the thing, she applauds right away. She's like, "Oh, that was wonderful." She's great. And unfortunately, Etta doesn't go to Hollywood with us.
No.
It's too bad because I love her.
Yeah.
And there's never too much Etta Candy for me.
Oh, it'll be a smash, Mr. Bremer.
Thank you. And all the box office receipts go to buy war bonds. So, General, Major, what do you say?
Well, I have to admit, I had my doubts when you first suggested this project, Mr. Bremer. But you won me over completely.
And me.
Me too. Just think, Hollywood.
Yeah, we're still hoping, Major, that your personal story is going to be part of the movie.
That's up to the general.
Oh, but he's got to be in the movie, General. Steve bringing that flaming plane in and saving his crew. That'll really be something to see.
And Diana also, strangely, was really into the film too. Like afterwards, she was smiling and nodding and thinking it was great, which I think is not necessarily characteristic of Diana Prince. I mean, she does work in the War Department, and she is military at least in her secret identity.
Yeah.
But as Wonder Woman, she's not necessarily pro-violence.
No.
Now we didn't get to see the whole picture, but what they showed was basically a lot of stuff getting blown up. Just a lot of tanks and a lot of explosions. And apparently Diana approved. She was like, "That was awesome."
Well, maybe she's thinking about Steve and uplifting his, because she was very, she was very into Steve back then. So
She was. And I got to tell you, I don't want to leap ahead here, but my wife and I were watching this episode again last night, and it got to the end, and we were watching on Max, even though I have the DVDs. It's just easier to put Max on, and it rolls into the next episode. And I'm like, "Ooh, I want to stop this. I don't want to watch this other episode. I want this episode to be on my mind." And she's like, "Oh, come on, let's watch a little bit. I've never seen the first episode of the second season." when they're at a different network and they're
That's right. Because Wonder Woman in Hollywood was the last of the first season,
it
and
was
that's
the
it.
yeah, this is the last episode. This is the last time we're in the 40s. It's the last time that
So
Major
it just
Steve
sort of
Trevor. What's
just
that?
ended. It just ended with that pretty much. We didn't get any closure. It just started in the new season. Yeah.
I know, and that's what I felt when we started the next episode. Suddenly we're in the 70s. Diana's been living on Paradise Island. No more Steve Trevor. It does open up with Lyle Wagner, but he's playing
Yeah.
his son,
Yes.
and,
Yes.
and it was so sad
It was. It was. And
because
sadly, I feel like the rest of the series, as the series went on, it lost a lot of its magic. I mean, Linda was fabulous, but they lost the relationship with Steve. They lost Paradise Island. They lost the Invisible Jet. They lost all those magic. And Linda was still fabulous, and she did some fabulous things. But yeah, that was sad. There was a lot of magic in the first season, so it was yeah.
And so if you're aware of that, so I hate to bring that downer into the piece here, but if you're aware of that, these moments like in the screening room when she's excited about Steve's record, she's like, "You were so heroic, people need to know." And
Yeah.
she's got that sort of, love in her face when she's like, "Steve, you're so awesome." Like this is their last chance. This episode is it. So if they don't get together, forget it. So there's a little bit of
I wonder if they knew back then that that was it, or if there were plans to keep going, or if it was just a sudden change and that was it.
yeah, that's a really good question because sometimes it seems like often, people will know by the time they're shooting their last episode, they'll know if a show's been canceled or if the contract is sort of up in the air. Like
Sure.
I get the impression the way I've heard Linda talk about this in the very few times that I've seen her in interviews and stuff. They didn't really know that it was going to be canceled, but they may have known that things were up in the air.
Yeah, yeah.
Because both she and Douglas Kramer, I think, were adamant about continuing, even if the network itself didn't want to. I think they
Yeah.
were already probably getting pushback and like this is so expensive and blah blah blah. At least in this episode, they got to use Warner Brothers studio a lot. They didn't have to like fabricate, too much of where they were. They just shot around the studio
Yeah,
where
yeah, yeah.
they already were, So but yeah, that's a good question. I don't know what they were aware of at the time. It'd be interesting to find out. But from what Linda says, I don't get the impression that they really knew things were ending,
Yeah.
Or I mean, I guess they weren't ending. So,
Mm. No,
but
exactly.
but they were finished up and I think it was CBS where they started, or was it ABC? I get
It was
confused.
actually, it went to CBS.
Okay, it went to CBS, right? Because yes, okay. So, there was another note that I had about that scene. Oh, there's another little exchange with Etta and Diana where Etta's super excited about Hollywood and it's so glamorous and she's just, jumping out of her skin about it. And Diana's like, it's just a suburb of Los Angeles.
How soon do you need the major in Hollywood, Mr. Bremer?
Well, as soon as possible. Can you leave tomorrow?
He sure can.
Can you be ready to go, Diana?
But do you need me in Hollywood?
Well, like that. Every beautiful young woman in these United States would give a right arm to go to Hollywood. And you ask if you need it there.
Well, I guess I just don't understand what's so special about Hollywood. It's just a small suburb in Los Angeles, isn't it?
Oh, Diana, sometimes I don't understand you.
Why?
Hollywood, Clark Gable, Cary Grant, Tyrone Power, Paradise, USA.
Paradise?
Absolutely.
Well, in that case, how can I refuse? I mean, I feel in need of a trip to Paradise about now.
So there's a double meaning there that she's just throwing out there for fun that nobody's going to pick up on, but of course we do. And then the next scene is there in Paradise Island, and of course Carolyn Jones and Debra Winger are back. We saw them in the Feminine Mystique,
Yeah.
and so Carolyn Jones as Queen Hippolyta and Debra Winger as Drusilla. Wonder Woman's sister, or I should say, Diana, Princess Diana's sister. And I don't know, when I talked about Carolyn Jones the last time,
Yeah.
about all of her credits, and I don't have all of them here, but I mean, I just mentioned that she was Morticia from the
Yes.
Addams Family. That's how she's best known. But I noticed that her last gig was on a soap called Capital, and
Oh,
she
okay.
was on there for 5 years,
Oh, okay. Wow.
and so she had a regular gig,
Yeah.
to sort of round up her career.
So. I don't even. I've never heard of it. Maybe we never got it here in Australia. I don't know.
I think we barely got it here in the States. I mean, I'm sure this is where it was, but I only vaguely remember hearing about it. So it was unfortunately one of those soaps that, maybe didn't last very long. Because usually these, the soaps that we've had have, they last 20, 30 years.
Oh yeah. We've still got we've got Days of Our Lives and Young and the Restless.
Yeah.
And stuff. Yeah.
So the description they have for this: while Steve and Yeoman Diana Prince make their way to Hollywood, in Paradise Island, the Queen of the Amazons, Carolyn Jones, announces the celebration of the 2000th anniversary of their arrival to the island in a 3-day festival. And under the Amazons' constitution, she cannot be queen of the celebration.
Bearing in mind, of course, that I cannot fulfill that function under our Constitution. Well, it should be Diana, of course. Oh, daughter, I only wish it could be so. It would be fitting. But, Mother, this is the 2000th anniversary of our arrival on Paradise Island. It's the biennial celebration of the most important day in our history. Diana's heir to the throne. Diana has to be here. I agree with you. She should be here. Well, then I guess someone will just have to go to America and bring her home for the festival. Did you have anyone special in mind for that assignment? No, not really, except that it should be someone who has been to America already and someone who is very close to Diana. Now, where could I find such a person? Mother! Very well, Drusilla, you can go fetch your sister. Thank you, Mother. Drusilla, remember, she said she was staying in a place called Hollywood. Drusilla, just give her the message and then come right back home. I don't want both my daughters in America in such perilous times. Drusilla, it just occurred to me, the last time you were in America... I'll tell Diana, and thanks, Mom. Oh, dear, I do hope I'm not making a mistake. Mom?
The Queen has some hesitation because the last time, last time Drusilla went to the States, there was trouble.
Yeah.
And in fact, it led to the Nazis taking over their island and everything. So it didn't go well. And Debra Winger's like, don't worry about it, see ya. And she runs out the door.
Yeah,
And there's this interesting sort of, in a little bit, it's a little bit out of place, especially when you've got their glamorous costumes and their, or the Queen's crown and everything. And it's also regal and mythical, and they're acting like a typical mom and daughter,
Yeah. That was, I guess, quite grounding for it, though, because otherwise it might have been a little bit jarring. It might have been a bit hard for people to take.
Right,
So that
right.
made it fun. But then, I mean, the whole series was a little bit camp, especially that first ABC series was a little bit cheeky, a little bit camp. It was really fun.
Yeah. And you don't really notice how I guess, different or unusual the costuming is until they stick Drusilla, on the back lot. So she arrives in Hollywood and she's standing there in what essentially is a nightgown or something. And I was going to ask you, so, you're like a costume guy. What do you think of, the Queen and Drusilla's outfits?
Well, I mean, for Drusilla, I mean, most of the Amazons, you sort of see them wearing that from the very beginning. Like in the very first pilot episode, Diana and there's another Amazon with her, I forgot her name, and they're running on the beach and Steve is on the beach and they're wearing something very similar, like these pastel little nighty things or whatever you guys, I'm not sure what you call them, or negligee or so, I don't know, whatever.
Right.
What you called, but they pretty much went for those little pastel numbers. And then I mean the Queen's outfit, I mean it was regal and everything. I mean the head thing and the you could tell that there was extensions and wig pieces in her hair. I was over the top, fabulous, but I guess it needed to be otherwise. Yeah.
And so this is that bimillennial celebration they're talking about. That's sort of, that gave me the feeling, because here in the States it was like it permeated everything. It was unlike really anything I've experienced before or after, where everybody, I mean, other than like, unfortunately, disasters sort of bring people together, like when the Twin Towers were attacked, and I'm sure when Pearl Harbor happened, these things that everybody in the country experiences at the same time. And this was a positive thing that everyone was experiencing. Like, this is our celebration, for good or bad, because nowadays we put things into perspective. Like, yes, we've been here for 200 years, but not everybody here has been free for 200 years, so there's some sort of reality that comes into the discussion of it. But at the time, it was very exciting for most people. And I think for me it was, but I'm just a white kid from a small town, so we were celebrating.
Well, we've got the similar sort of situation here. Our bicentennial was in the 80s, was in the late around the mid 1988 was our bicentennial. So it was a very big time for us too, but also the same thing. We have, there's the indigenous cultures, there was indigenous cultures that were here before us. So it's not looked on favorably with, settlement here in Australia and all that sort of stuff. So we had that, But back then in the 80s, it wasn't as big a deal. But now it's a bit more, a bit more of an issue. But yeah.
So the apparent excitement that permeated, which is why I think they felt they had to include something like, and there were things in the previous part of the season that sort of, I think, referenced the what was happening in 1976. Like, they reissued the $2 bill, and so there was an episode about that, and when we transition to B-roll, or I'm sorry, when we transition to Hollywood, there's B-roll about, that's showing off Hollywood, and it's it's a little bit funny because it's obviously not something they shot for the show. Some of it's black and white. And they're showing off all these pieces of Hollywood, but it is interesting to see like what they thought was cool Hollywood stuff at the time that they could show off, the Hollywood Bowl and the sign that's leading into Beverly Hills, and things like that, and of course the big Hollywood sign.
Yes, of course. Yeah.
They show that they kind of try to show that Drusilla sees that as she's flying in.
Yeah. I'd like to know how many invisible jets they had on Paradise Island. They obviously had more than one. They've probably got a fleet of them.
I never thought of that. I didn't because that's not Diana's invisible jet.
Where did Diana keep her invisible jet? Where was it the whole time when she needed it? Where did it go? So maybe it's back to Paradise Island and they just borrow. It's like Ubering the one jet or something. I don't know.
That is a question that may never be answered. My goodness.
I don't think it will. It's also like the on the first in the pilot episode, how the Amazons got the gun to do the bullets and the bracelets.
Right.
That's come up. I mean, that's explained in one of the comic versions, like in an iteration of the 80s comic, but it's never been explained anywhere else. And so it's been brought up a few times of where did the Amazons get the guns from? So if they've got a fleet of jets, maybe they go out, to the outside world every now and then and do a bit of research or something.
Well, she takes her Uber borrowed jet. Goes to Hollywood, and while the movie is being shot, Drusilla arrives, as well as Corporal James, played by Robert Hayes, another one of the war heroes who are participating in the movie. And Diana goes out to the set in search of coffee for Steve, and she's surprised by a visit from a younger sister. She also notices that they're trying to capture Corporal Ames. Sorry, that's a little bit clunkily written. What happens is, so they're in the, they're shooting the scene. So they're showing Steve, he's in this fake plane, and the makeup person goes up to to put fake sweat on him. She's like sprays him in the face. And Diana's watching. She's sort of amused by this whole thing. And then she notices that this lighting rig is starting to collapse. Like just out of nowhere, the leg is bending, like somebody overloaded it or something. So she hides somewhere, turns into Wonder Woman, comes out, unbends the leg, fixes it. And then sort of, and then they show the director, and he's like, what happened to the key light? What? Cut. And then they look over, and there's Diana sort of leaning against the lighting rig. And they're like, Yeoman Prince, stop leaning on the light.
He was a grumpy director. He was pretty stressed, that director, in that episode.
Yes, and I have to point out that every director in Hollywood apparently wears a beret.
Yes, that's true.
I guess so you know who the director is when you're watching a movie. because every single until I don't know 1980, every director they show in movies, they have a beret. They're probably wearing a cravat. This guy wears a cravat in a later scene, and they have a megaphone, which this guy didn't have. But usually they've got a megaphone so they can yell at people. And none of this is probably true. Like maybe the the directors in the 1920s and 30s, wore a beret and used a megaphone, but I think it stopped after a while. They got assistants to yell for them, so they didn't need the megaphone. But anyway, so she comes up to Steve, and he's like,
Yes, sir.
Look, I'm kind of stuck up here in the sky. Can you get us a couple of cups of coffee, black, please?
Sure. I think there's some just out back at the stage. It'll take a few minutes.
Thank you.
Okay.
like he's stuck in this plane. And my wife noticed that, even for the time period, Steve is polite about it. He's like not assuming she's going to run and get coffee. He asks her, would you please? Which is lovely because, he's a swell guy. Steve is. And so then she goes out in search of coffee, and that's when she runs into Drusilla. And she also notices Corporal Ames, Robert Hayes, and a car suddenly pulls up, and these two thugs try to drag him into the car. And before I say what happened after that, I should stop and talk about Robert Hayes a little bit. Of course, he's famous. Everybody knows him. He's most famous for Airplane, of course.
Yes.
And also
in Australia, they called that movie Flying High. It wasn't called Airplane in Australia. It was called Flying High.
Really?
Yeah, Flying High and then Flying High 2. I don't know what the connotation was for that, like Flying High or Flying High. So, yeah. But, yeah, they renamed it. It wasn't called Airplane in Australia. It was called Flying High.
I wonder why. Is there?
Sometimes it used to happen. They've done it with a few movies. They've renamed them in Australia. I know for sure. Madonna's 80s Blonde Ambition movie was called Truth or Dare in America, and they called it In Bed with Madonna in Australia. It's subtle, just to keep things subtle and low key.
Wow, that's really interesting.
A couple of times now it doesn't happen very much anymore at all, I don't think. But in like years back, it used to change. But Flying High, yeah, that's what it was. Airplane was called Flying High in Australia. That's the only movie that I know Robert from. To be honest, I don't.
Well, he had a big TV career, so I guess he's more familiar to me. I was trying to figure out how else I knew him. He was in a series called Angie that was kind of big for a while, and in the 80s, and also I didn't know this until I think last year or the year before. My wife and I realized that there was a TV version of the movie Starman that was attempted. It only
Oh,
Yeah, it only lasted one season,
Jeff
but
Bridges movie,
what's that?
from the movie with Jeff Bridges.
Yes, yeah, and he played the Jeff Bridges role in the TV series.
Oh, maybe it sounds vaguely familiar though, but yeah, maybe I've just yeah, okay.
Yeah,
And
and
Robert was in that.
yes, he played the Jeff Bridges role.
Oh
So
wow.
so he and we watched a little bit of it, and I can see it didn't it didn't capture exactly the sort of the magic that Starman had, because Starman, was kind of a road movie in a way. Like, he had a goal from the very beginning. He had a goal to get to a certain place. And
Yeah,
so it was just a question of how he got from A to B and how he got past the people that were trying to stop him. And
yeah.
so for a series, they had to sort of extend his journey. And so it couldn't just be that simple. And
Hmm.
and I think they didn't quite know how to do that, and they kind of made it like like the Incredible Hulk, or
Right.
The Fugitive, where
Yeah,
it's sort of this anthology where he goes from place to place and kind of has an adventure in each town that he
sure.
winds up in.
I get
And
it.
yeah, and so it felt like it was wandering a little bit.
Yeah,
Like, after we watched a couple of episodes, we're like, this is the Incredible Hulk without Bill Bixby. you know?
yes.
So anyway, so that was he also he got a start in shows like The Rockford Files, Marcus Welby, Streets of San Francisco, and one of my favorite movie titles in his credits is Sharknado 2, the second one.
Oh, really? As recent as that? That's fairly recent.
Yeah. Well, I believe he's still at it. He although his credits stop, about there, in the teens somewhere, the 20 teens.
Right.
But he's still around, and he does have like directing and producing credits, so I wonder if his focus might be somewhere else. But now I guess Sharknado didn't change its title when it came to Australia.
No, we had that. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because that's a perfect title for a movie.
Yeah.
You don't want to mess with perfection.
No, no.
Um, so now also the thugs, one of the thugs, the Nazi thugs that we sort of get to know throughout the show, is a guy
Mhm.
named it's an actor named Charles Cyphers, who plays Kurt, which is
Right.
a perfect name for a Nazi thug.
Yeah.
Uh, and he has some varied credits, but what's interesting about his credits to me is that he did a lot of John Carpenter movies. He
Oh,
start
okay.
he did Assault on Precinct 13, which I think is John Carpenter's first movie, and The Fog, and he played Lee Brackett in Halloween 1, 2, and Halloween Kills in 2021.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Wow.
So, and that's Kurt, and we will see him more later. And oh, I already talked about this. Sorry, I'm looking at my notes. Wonder
You're right.
Woman does fix the light, and all directors wear berets. Okay. But where's the megaphone is my note. So anyway, oh, and so at this point, I have to tell you, so I don't know everything, but I am an actor, and I've worked on film sets, and I work in television. So I know a
Okay.
little bit about, and I probably think I know more than I do
Sure.
about how it works to create a film, and what it takes. And I always feel when I see filming being portrayed in a film or on TV that they're getting it wrong.
Right.
And the thing is, these are people that work in that industry, every single one of them, right? Like, all the actors and the director, the real director, the real writer, and everybody portraying somebody on the set, they all work in that industry.
Yeah.
And somehow I always get the feeling they're not really getting it right.
Right.
And
Right. Right.
and I have to believe that that's on purpose. Like, they need to change things for the audience to simplify it or something. And I guess that's what it is, because on a real set, I know there's a lot of sitting around. Like there's a lot of downtime because most of the day is like lighting guys, setting up the lights and trying to get
Yeah.
the lighting right and checking the camera. And, there's like all this stuff going on that is not acting. Like the
Yeah.
acting part is like maybe 5% of what happens in a given day.
Yeah.
And so I guess that would be boring.
Mm.
I guess it's to just economize the time and compress what we're seeing. But it's just so weird to me because it always feels like these guys don't know how a film happens, but they have to know. They have to. So,
Yeah.
okay. So anyway, they're on the back lot. Drusilla explains to Diana why she's there. It's about the bi-millennial celebration, and tells her that Diana says, "Well, I'll make every effort to be there, but something's going on here. Something's and there's not that much other than Robert Hayes almost being kidnapped right in front of them, which I never got back to, by the way. When Wonder Woman, when she sees the kidnapping happen, she's like, "Don't worry, Drew, I got this." And then she like does her spin, turns into Wonder Woman, and she flies in there. She jumps over the car and and does the thing where you take like two thugs and run them into each other to knock them out, and then they both fall away. And then she helps Robert Hayes, and the Nazis kind of come to and run into their car. And as usual, this seems to happen in every episode where she could easily tie people up and, stop them from running away. She just lets them go because and I think I've decided that it's just because she's so powerful. It's not important. She'll get to it. She'll catch them the next time they come around, So, but she allows them to go while she's like, just checking to make sure Robert Hayes is okay. And Drew comes up and we get the feeling, looking at Drew's face, that she's instantly in love with Robert Hayes.
Yeah. That was a funny episode.
Yeah. So, and look, my wife and I were talking about the age difference because this happens weirdly, in more than once in this show, and sometimes with Drew, sometimes with other women, where she's 15 years old, or at least Diana says that's how old she is, and this guy Robert Hayes, at the very minimum, he's got to be 21 or 22. I'm gonna say. Because I don't think he's a commissioned officer. I think he's a corporal. And so that would indicate maybe he didn't go to college. So if he signed up right at 18 and, he's gone through his service, he's done his supposedly heroic deed, which we'll get to, then, he's 21, 22. And that's a little bit uncomfortable, but not, I guess for the era, not outrageous, but still a little cringy that she is 15.
But then it happened in some episodes too with Linda, with Diana, with Wonder Woman, like in the episode of oh god, with the guy from Out of Space, Andros, and he's a much older guy, and they like have that. What was the episode?
That was
Judgment from Outer Space.
Yes.
So there's that relationship. But then in the second series, when they move it to the 70s, he comes back, but he's a much younger guy. He's still the same character, but they got a younger actor to do that role.
Right.
It's such a big age difference,
Well, and there's no Steve Trevor to get in the way. So
what was the age difference between Steve Trevor and between Lyle and Linda? Do you know?
Well, Linda was only like 21 or 22 when she started the show. So it was a fairly significant age difference. But I think, again, for that era, once a woman turns 21, I guess she can date anybody. And so it didn't seem as weird as like a 15-year-old. But I think there was a significant age difference because I think he was close to 40. Like I think he was pushing his late 30s at least.
Wow. Okay. Wow, that's a lot. Yeah. Yeah.
If
Okay.
if I mean if I hope I'm not speaking out of turn because I could look
Yeah.
it up, but I'm not going to.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
But anyway, yeah, there was an age difference there too. But we also, as we were discussing this, we pointed out that Drusilla, they say she's 15 because she looks young and she's 15 or looks 15, but she's probably like 200 years old, because she's from Paradise Island,
Paradise. Yes.
and because Diana's like, I don't know how old, but she's definitely older than 21.
Yes. Well, in that first episode that you're talking about, in the pilot of the new season,
Mm-hmm.
she tells Steve Trevor that she's 2,400 something.
Wow. Okay.
So in that next pilot episode that you didn't want to watch, did you watch it all?
No. I stopped before that part. So
One scene where she actually introduces herself to Steve Trevor Jr., she tells him that that's how old she is, 2,400 something. There's something like that. It's in the 2000s, yeah.
right. Okay.
And he's good for your age.
So so if her younger sister, like, going by a sort of similar percentage, she's got to be at least 1,000 years old.
That's right.
Drusilla, yeah. Okay. All right. So that's not so bad then, because in a way then she's way too old for Robert Hayes.
That's right. Yeah.
Okay. Well, then I approve of the romance. Why not? Uh, so anyway, after that, let me make sure I hit all my notes. We got our second Wonder Woman spin. That's great. And I'm obsessed with Debra Winger's nightgown. She's still in that crazy getup. I mean, it's not crazy, and it's cool is I forgot to mention that when she first shows up, she's just talking to a bunch of like this fanboy who just got somebody's autograph, and this guard comes up to her and says, "You're in that what is it, the Roman
or something? Yeah.
You're in that movie. You better get going." Like, and it's a great way to break up the scene, like, because it sort of comes out of nowhere, but at least she looks like she's in a costume for something.
Great episode because it had all those funny bits in it. I think it was a really good episode.
Yeah,
Definitely one of my favorites. Yeah.
Oh, and so Diana is kind of saying you really need to get back to Paradise Island, but
I'm concerned that someone might be trying to sabotage this film project. Who? I have no idea. A rival studio, maybe. I've heard a lot of things about Hollywood. People call it a jungle. Oh, all I saw was half a dozen sad-looking palm trees. Hardly a jungle, then. Dude, it's not that kind of jungle. It's a jungle where businessmen prey on each other. Never will understand the... Well, me neither. But I'm certainly learning more each day. Me too. But the lesson's over for now. You have to return home to Paradise Island. I just got here. I know. I'm sure Mother told you to deliver me the message and return home immediately, didn't she? Can't I just stay for the night? Mom won't mind, really. Well, I really missed you, and there is a party tonight. It'd be fun going together, don't you think? It's what they call a Hollywood party. But tomorrow you leave, understood? Yeah.
And from what we know these days about Hollywood parties, it's not something you want to bring your 15-year-old sister to.
No, exactly.
But at the time, she says, it sounds fun, but we're supposed to wear something slinky. I don't know what that means, but we got to find some slinky, clothing. So they go to the Hollywood party. This is run by the director. And did I talk about the director? I feel like I did. Harris Yulin. I mentioned his name, but I didn't
talk about him though.
No, he and the thing is, I really like from the get-go, I really like this actor.
Yeah.
He looks familiar, and I look at his credits and I'm like, well, I've seen him around, but I don't remember him from anything specific. Just one of those guys that you've seen in a million things, and he was in Scarface, Clear and Present Danger, Ghostbusters 2. and
Okay.
and 3 episodes of Buffy the Vampire Slayer, and
Well,
he's definitely still working. He's got a 2024 movie uh called Omni Loop, which is like
wow.
it looks like an indie sort of time travel movie.
Yeah.
And anyway, I really liked him. Like everything he did um was subtle. Like there are these actors that like write pages and pages of background for their character. He looked like
Yeah.
one of those guys, because every time somebody said something to him, it looked like he was thinking about 3 different things at the same time. Like, oh yeah, I remember when that happened. So I just really enjoyed him.
Yeah. No, he was really good. Yeah.
And so we're at his house, and he's this cigar chomping, like typical. He looks like, the director's like, I want you to look like a typical producer. Here's a big cigar. And so he's always chomping on this big cigar, but he's doing this actor stuff that makes him look like way more like deep and intelligent than your typical Hollywood producer is supposed to look. So, but anyway, so we meet 2 other stars of the film. Uh, Sergeant Harry Willard, played by David Himes, and Lieutenant Bill Rand, uh, who's played by Ross Bickle. And before I get into the action of this scene, I want to talk about specifically Ross Bickle. So these 2 fellows, first of all, so David Himes is um, the the Sergeant Harry Willard. He's like the shorter sort of army guy, and he has one of those careers that's like pretty average. He seemed like he was working a lot. Nothing really big came out at me, but Ross Bickle had a similar career, and I almost didn't look at his bio. And then I did and realized that this is Lonnie Anderson's husband. And the reason, yeah, and the reason that's significant to me is because I was guesting on another podcast called Eventually Supertrain, and it's about short-lived TV series. And Linda Carter did a TV series later with Lonnie Anderson called Partners in. Well, it was called, yeah, it was called Partners in Crime here. I know that in England it was called Double Trouble or something like that. So I don't know if it was called Partners in Crime in Australia, but
I get it while I'm talking to you.
okay. So while you're looking that up, so the thing that's interesting is I was doing some background reading because I wanted to know what happened to that series because it only lasted 13 episodes. And I was like, Lonnie Anderson and Linda Carter, that's star power. How could that only last 13 episodes? So I read Lonnie Anderson's autobiography. And the way that she met Linda Carter was because she moved to Hollywood with her husband.
Mhm.
And he guested on an episode, and she got to meet Linda Carter, and they became friends. And this is that episode. And Ross Bickle is Lonnie Anderson's husband at the time.
Oh, that's amazing.
Yeah, and unfortunately, Lonnie Anderson's autobiography is, and she never uses this term, but it is chock full of examples of toxic, insecure males. Like
Right.
every single male that
Hollywood.
she's, yeah,
Yep.
yeah. I mean, her first husband, even before she came to Hollywood, her first husband was so insecure. She was like, he got insanely jealous anytime she made a move. And
Right.
and then she married Ross Bickle, and she was actors with him in Minnesota, and they decided to come to Hollywood. His career never took off. And in the
Right.
meantime, she got WKRP, and so she became a star, and
Yeah.
and he couldn't deal with it. And then she wound up with Burt Reynolds, and even Burt Reynolds couldn't deal with,
Oh, no.
he was insanely jealous. He was like, he couldn't, he was very controlling. It's a not a flattering picture of Reynolds, unfortunately, in her book. And she's not mean about it. She's just like, she's reporting the facts, but she's like, she is constantly giving them the benefit of the doubt. Anyway, I don't want to get into a big Lonnie Anderson discussion, but Ross Bickle, this Lieutenant Bill Rand, that's her, that's her husband at the time, Lonnie Anderson's husband, so this episode sort of leads to their friendship that eventually winds up in Partners in Crime in the 80s. So,
Oh wow.
So there you go.
Oh, that's amazing.
And watching this episode, I don't want to be mean to Ross Bickle, but I mean, he's okay. But I can see how his star didn't really take off,
So he's one of the soldiers, one of the other heroes.
Right. He's one of the two first ones that get kidnapped. And he's specifically in this scene, what happens is, he starts talking to an actress named Gloria, a little starlet who's in fact wearing a slinky dress.
Yes.
And so Linda Carter and Debra Winger point that out, like, that's a slinky dress. Now we know. And so he talks to her, Lieutenant Bill Rand, talks to actress Gloria, and she kind of seduces him into going off with him.
I think it's absolutely marvelous what you did. I mean, it's so brave.
Not really. Tell the truth, I just acted out of instinct.
With all your men injured like that, you kept firing. And you sunk a Nazi battleship.
Just a destroyer.
Destroyer battleship, it's all the same, you sunk it. Did the president give you that medal personally?
In the flesh.
Tell me about it.
Well, I was called up to the White House and the president came out.
No, not here. There are too many people. Let's go somewhere else where we can be alone.
He grabs some champagne. He's like, "Oh, this is great. I'm going to be with a starlet." And they go off in a room and start talking. And he talks about like, "Well, I'm not really a hero, but I just acted by instinct." Just sort of like doing his humble brag. And but then Thug Kurt and his other henchmen come in from behind and chloroform this, or they don't chloroform him yet. They take him by gunpoint. And so Gloria was there just to trap this guy. Right. And so that's one of Bill Rand's big scenes. Probably his one scene of import in this show. And it's okay. Like, I'm not saying he's a bad actor. It's nice, but it's Hollywood. It's tough. He's not a chiseled, handsome dude. I think he's better suited to play character roles. At least that's how actors get relegated, at least in the 70s, like either you're tall and handsome or you're short and goofy. And there's no in between. That's right. So, but anyway, Christopher Norris is this blonde starlet, and I spent the episode thinking, I know her from somewhere. And she's one of the main characters in the show Trapper John MD. And that's how I know her. She's been in other stuff. She's been in Airport 75, Summer of 42. She was a character named Laura Asher on Santa Barbara for a number of years. And she was in the great Roger Corman movie starring Ron Howard, Eat My Dust.
Oh, right.
Yeah. It's a very minor film, but I think I watched it when I was a kid because it was Ron Howard. Like, oh my gosh, it's Ron Howard from Happy Days. And he was in this crazy movie where he was somebody that was nobody like Richie Cunningham, And but I guess she played his girlfriend in that. And but I know her as Ripples, the unfortunately named or nicknamed nurse on Trapper John MD. So anyway, so she does away with him with Lieutenant Bill Rand by way of Kurt, and everyone else kind of enjoys the party, and people filter out, and then after everybody leaves, and this cigar chomping producer gets rid of, he gets rid of Gloria and gets rid of the woman who's, taking care of the party. We find out that he's a Nazi, and he does this shift. And the thing is, this is like one of the reasons I love this actor, is because it's so subtle. He doesn't make a big deal out of suddenly turning towards the camera and being a totally different character. You just hear that he's actually got a German accent, which he didn't have before. He had like some kind of, crazy producer accent. And so suddenly he's talking with a German accent to this Kurt guy. And we find out that he's a Nazi.
Gloria? Yes, everyone's gone. You can come out. I assume that everything went all right.
Perfectly.
That's very good, my dear. Well done. Your help. Good night. Thanks, Paula. It's all for now. You can finish it up in the morning.
Mark, where's the blonde?
She's gone.
What did you tell her?
I did not have to tell her anything, Kurt. I promised her a part in a picture. Is everything all right when you're in?
Perfect.
Well, that will be a change from this morning's fiasco with Corporal Lane.
I think I had seen this episode before, but I didn't remember the details. And so it was wonderful to have these big surprises. And this is like one of the two big surprises that I found in this show. And I guess I should point out after the fact, this is a spoiler podcast. We go right to the end. And because usually that doesn't really matter in a Wonder Woman episode. There are no surprises. It's just like, how do we get from A to B? And we know Wonder Woman's going to win in the end. So it doesn't matter. But every now and then, like in the pilot episode with Red Buttons, Red Buttons was like, he was just this little slimy producer, but then you find out halfway through that he's actually a Nazi. And so that kind of like ramps everything up.
That's what I always found hilarious about looking back at it now. As a kid, it never occurred to me. But what I thought was interesting was that the Nazis were able to disguise their Nazi accent with an American accent. Yeah. I don't think that's that easy to do, but I just it was hilarious that now looking back, it's like, I mean, how would a Nazi hide their, be able to put on such a good American accent? I don't know if it. But I thought it was hilarious. But and so many did it. They would, nearly every episode with Nazis and that always hid their, had a hidden accent with an American accent. It was really funny.
Yeah, and I swear, because I think this actor's really good, and maybe I'm wrong about this, but I swear when he does the producer character, you can hear that he is. I mean, he's probably an American guy who has a normal American accent, but he's acting like a guy who's German trying to fake an American accent. Like his American accent.
Oh, okay. I'll have to pay more attention to that one. Yeah.
Yeah. There's just a few words where I noticed they sound a little bit off. Like when somebody fakes an Australian accent, you can hear that it's not quite right. And you can't always point out what it is about it, but it's not right. And so like, when like the guys from Monty Python play Americans, it sounds pretty good, but there's something not quite right about it. And I don't know what it is, but it sounds like a British guy putting on an American accent. And so I swear it sounded like the producer later in the episode was putting on an American accent. And so you could tell now that he's a Nazi.
I have to watch it again. Pay attention to that.
Yeah, it may be my imagination. I mean, because when I like an actor, I really like them. And I like this guy. Because like everything, what I was hesitating to say before was that, especially when he's a Nazi, he doesn't say things in a stereotypical way that you've seen on this show, where the Nazis are very disciplined and excited about, the power that they're going to get. And, he's been promised that he's going to be in charge of all American cinema when they win the war. Everything he says comes with this sort of underlying sorrow. He's thinking, the things I've had to do as a Nazi
It's
to
true.
get
Yeah,
this. Yeah, like there's just this sadness in his eyes, and
yeah.
I just think it's wonderful.
Yeah.
So, and my wife, speaking of that, my wife did point out as we were watching that she believes that it's Linda Carter's naturalism that has helped influence some of the more natural, less cartoonish acting in this as we've moved through the first season here, because that's what sort of she's noticed about the trajectory of what's happening. And certainly when we get into the 70s, because that was what Linda Carter wanted. Like Linda was thrilled that seasons 2 and 3 took place in the present day. She liked the way it was sort of grounded in reality. I think that's the way you put it. So I think, part of that is just her natural, sort of vibe that she has when she's doing this character. And I think that, what my wife was pointing out was that it had an influence on other characters and, even other directors and sort of, just the way the show evolved.
Yeah.
And I think that's right. So after this scene, after we find out the producer is a Nazi, the following morning, they realize Lieutenant Rand, our friend Ross, doesn't show up on the set. And so Steve asks Bremer for a list of the guests from the party from the previous night. So he's already suspicious, and he's suspicious of Gloria specifically, like he kind of remembers her. And because he saw her talking to Lieutenant Rand. And also, I think the producer sort of made a joke about it. He's like, well, I think he found a starlet, and that's why he's gone, And at the party, at last night, Steve was like, ho, ho, yeah, I guess that's it. And so, but now he's like, maybe she's not who she says she is. And so, and since they know that, Corporal Ames, Robert Hayes, has already had a kidnap attempt, they decide to keep an eye on him.
One thing I do know, I'm going to keep a pretty close eye on Harry Willard and young Jim from now on.
Jim's withdrew. They went somewhere to have a farewell soda.
She's leaving?
I'm afraid so. She has to go home to Mother. At least she did have to go home. Maybe it's better if she sticks around for a while. She can help us watch out for Jim.
Well, good would a 15-year-old girl be if there was any trouble?
Maybe none, but one thing's for sure, she'll know where he is all the time.
So then of course we cut to Drusilla and Robert Hayes, going out for a drink at the soda shop like young people do, because she loves her some ice cream. She loves everything at the soda shop. And she opens this scene, unfortunately for Debra Winger. I can see how Debra Winger was maybe frustrated with this character. Like, looking where her career went after this and the roles that she wants to play, this is not it. Like, she's playing this teen who's very excited about ice cream. Like they cut to the scene and her first line is,
I really like ice cream sodas. Could I have another one?
And then later, there's another scene where she's in the same soda shop and she's like,
I really like hot ice. Winter's even better than ice cream.
That's her first line in the scene. It's almost like every scene is gonna, I love these new dresses. I love this slinky outfit, whatever. I just thought that was funny. And maybe
she's been on Paradise Island for a long time. They're probably limited. She's probably seen the same thing over and over again. And yeah.
Well, that's true. I mean, if that first scene, the way they decided to show that that sort of mother and daughter dynamic is that she looked incredibly bored. She looked like I would rather be anywhere than here, which is like a typical teen thing, but also very consistent with what you're saying,
And it's really funny because I think they brought a lot of that sort of those elements of Wonder Girl that was in Drusilla is now in the modern Wonder Woman in the comics. Like even in the movie with Gal Gadot, she wants to get off the island. She's doing whatever she can. She's over it, sort of thing. And then when she's in the city, she loves ice cream as well.
Yeah.
So there's all those little funny elements that are in the comics and in the movies and shows now. So it's really interesting. Yeah,
That's right. That's right. So in this ice cream shop, our favorite place,
yes.
Drew goes to she says she's going to the ladies' room, but I think she's making a phone call to Diana. And these two goofballs, I guess they're supposed to be merchant marines or something. Like, it's weird to find like people who hate the military. Like in this time of like, very patriotic America where everybody looks up to the military. And I've seen it before where they decide the merchant marines are the ones that hate the military. And I don't know why. Maybe it's because the merchant marine is like guys that couldn't get into the army for whatever reason. They had a criminal record or something. I don't know. But anyway, these two guys, which at first I thought they were just like high school idiots, but then I think their outfits suggested maybe they're merchant marine or something. But in any case, these two guys come up and start hassling Robert Hayes. And they're played by Daniel Thorpe and Barry Van Dyke, which you may recognize from the name. Barry Van Dyke is the son of Dick Van Dyke.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and so he's the taller one. Barry Van Dyke, he did get his start on his father's show. There was the new Dick Van Dyke show in 70.
Bully, the main one that was talking?
Yeah, like the taller guy with the kind of chiseled face and the big chin with the dimple. So yeah, he was he got his start on his dad's show in 71, and he also the way I really know him is from Galactica 1980, which is it was a continuation of Battlestar Galactica, and he played one of the main characters. He also, I didn't realize this, but he was also in the movie Ants. It was a TV movie about a colony of ants that, take over a resort. And it's one of those like goofy, Animals Gone Wild horror movies, like William Shatner's Kingdom of the Spiders. But Ants starred the great Linda Day George, who was the Nazi Wonder Woman in an earlier episode.
I think second or third episode, Fausta, the Nazi Wonder Woman.
Fausta. Yeah, yes. That was Linda Day George.
Yeah, wow.
And it also stars Suzanne Summers in one of her first roles.
Oh, wow, okay.
So that was a great movie. I loved it. I'll tell you. And Daniel Thorpe does not have a completely dynamic resume, but he comes back to Wonder Woman later in season 3, Amazon Hot Wax. So he's got that going for him. And also he was in an episode of MASH, which I always love to mention because I love MASH. He was in an episode called White Gold, and I believe he was one of the 3 guys who were stealing penicillin. And he ran away and left his buddy to get in trouble for it. So he played another slime ball, basically. Right. I have probably seen Amazon Hot Wax in the past because I think it's when Linda gets to do some singing.
Yes, she goes recording studio and something. She poses as an upcoming singer or something.
Yeah, which I'm really looking forward to.
Yeah, I've got to watch it again. It's like not one of my most memorable episodes, I don't think, but yeah, I'll have to check it out again.
Yeah, it's interesting. I look at it differently now that I know how much she loves singing.
Oh, and of course.
Yeah, and I think she wanted to, at least get it into an episode. Like, why can't I sing in an episode, Yeah. And so I think that's what that's all about. But anyway, so he plays a small character in that. So these two thugs start giving Robert Hayes a hard time, and Drusilla sees this happening and sees that Robert Hayes is not defending himself.
Yes.
And so she turns into Wonder Girl. She does her own spin,
Yeah.
and
Which she highly criticized for because a lot of people don't believe she could spin very well. So
and that's the problem. That's unfortunately the problem with Linda Carter being such a good dancer. She made it
yes,
look easy. And
exactly.
and I've talked to cosplayers before who have tried to do the spin, and they're like, that's really hard, you know. So and Deborah found that out because
Yeah.
she does a mediocre spin. She almost runs into the wall, and but she does it.
But in
And
the earlier episodes, the spins were very dynamic because they shot them at different angles, like up angles and different angles, whereas they didn't do that anymore in the later seasons.
oh yeah,
Really
I
interesting.
yeah
Sad in a way. They did some really great angles with some of those spins of Linda in the ABC series.
well, I'm sad, but I'm
Yeah,
glad I've gotten to see these. I like I say, I haven't watched the later episodes, the season 2 and 3, because
right.
I've been so involved, doing this podcast. I did, the reason I got back into Wonder Woman is because they were playing it on MTV, or I'm sorry,
Right,
MeTV.
right.
Uh, and so I watched episodes here and there, and I'm sure I watched, later season episodes, but I don't remember them very well right now.
Yeah.
Uh, except the one with Martin Mull. I remember that. The
Which one?
the Pied Piper guy.
Oh, Pied Piper. That, yeah.
I think that's such a goofy episode. I mean, and part of it is Martin Mull because he's such a goofball, like in everything else. He kind of
Yeah.
plays it straight in this episode, but you can kind of tell also that he's secretly, I don't know, making fun of every scene that he's in. It's just
Yeah.
so weird. The whole thing is so weird. So I'm looking forward to that. But I digress. So Debra Winger does her semi-okay spin, and she runs in and, throws these goofballs around, and then Robert Hayes runs for it immediately. He runs away. And she's like, what is up with this guy? I thought he was a war hero. So anyway,
Right.
she goes back to change back into herself. And in the meantime, there's this crazy little moment where the soda jerk, the guy working there, he kind of helps the one goofball up, the thug. I guess his name is George. He's played by Daniel Thorpe. He's been thrown over the counter, so he helps him up and puts his hat on him and kind of gives him a shove, like.
Yes.
But the thing is, it's almost like he was told to do that, but he didn't want to be too mean about it. You know?
Right.
Like, the director said, stick his hat on his head and give him a shove. And the actor's like, okay. And he like just kind of does it and gives him a little poke, but he didn't want to be too mean to him. So I don't know, if we're conveying that the soda jerk was like buddies with this guy, or if it's just an extra who couldn't act.
Might have been regulars at the cafe.
Yeah. Like I want you guys to come back. Maybe don't beat people up, but So anyway, I thought that was weird. And so then they sort of cower in the corner, and Drusilla comes back out, having changed back, and she leaves, but she kind of looks over her shoulder and smiles at them like, haha. And then she finds Robert Hayes outside.
Oh, what happened in there?
There's a fight. Didn't you see?
No, I was in the powder room.
You didn't see anything?
Well, yes, I saw two men laying on the floor.
Well, they started picking on me. I took care of them.
You... Oh.
Come on, we better get back to the studio.
And so she's like, okay, he just lied. That's weird too.
Then she contacts Diana, doesn't she?
Oh, yeah.
And tells Diana that he's lying and that he's not the hero that he's making out to be.
Exactly. Yeah. And so now I've gotten my notes out of order because I couldn't.
Oh, sorry.
No. Not because of you. It's because I had to look up like Jerry Van Dyke and this guy, because what happened was I'm trying to put the character attributions in order of the scenes that they appear in, but some guys at first I didn't know like who they were playing. Like I know Barry Van Dyke, but like I didn't know some of these other actors, and just saying a guy played George, I'm like, well, which one was George? I don't know. Like there's one actor who I'm not even sure who he was. But I think this Eric Bowles, who plays a character named Roger,
Right.
and I don't know who that is. I think it's the kid who was getting autographs at the beginning. When Drusilla first gets to
I mean, and then he's asking her why she's dressed like that.
exactly, yeah. And I think that's the guy. I didn't want to miscredit him, but nobody calls him Roger, so I don't who's Roger. But I think he's the only other guy in the show with a speaking part, so it must be that guy. And the reason I wanted to mention him was because of some interesting credits. First of all, he played a young Tony on an episode of I Dream of Jeannie, which I think is a great claim to fame.
Okay, yeah.
And he played a DCC man in Chud 2, Bud the Chud. I don't know what a DCC man is, but I love that movie title. Chud 2, Bud the Chud.
Wasn't that a scary movie?
Yeah, Chud is cannibalistic humanoid underground dwellers. They're basically.
Yeah, I remember the cover. It had like this green thing coming out of a manhole in the or the sewer or something like that. I never forget, but I don't think I ever saw it.
I wound up.
I always remember seeing the cover at the video store.
Yeah, I saw it at a party in the 80s at some point, and I'm not sure it was I hadn't seen a movie like it before, I'll say that. It's really something. But I don't think I saw Chud 2, Bud the Chud. But yeah. I do like saying that title. So and the third credit, which I don't want to joke about the subject matter. It's called the movie's called The Violation of Sarah McDavid, and he's credited simply as rapist. And like I say, not funny subject matter, but as an actor, that's not something you really want on your resume. Like that's not something you want people to remember you by. I'll say that. So that's an unfortunate credit. But I think Chud 2, Bud the Chud makes it up. Makes up for it.
Okay. Yeah.
Because that's one great movie title. Now, so now that we've straightened all that out, so I think that's the guy. So we're back on the set, and Sergeant Harry Willard disappears after the shooting of a scene. This is like that scene with all the gunfighting, and
yes.
The army guy, the army hero, he like disappears into a building, and
that's
then,
right. It comes back out.
Yeah, and so the director, who finally, I believe by now, finally has his cravat, so he's almost got the complete director costume. He goes after him, and he can't find him.
Yeah.
And so, and in the meantime, the producer overhears Steve asking Diana to check the guest list at the producer party, and let's track down that starlet. And so the producer / Nazi guy is like, well, we're going to have to escalate, and we'll kidnap Steve and the other guy, Robert Hayes, and get the show on the road. And it was a short scene, so we didn't mention it. It wasn't mentioned in this little synopsis I have, but there was a quick scene in the submarine where they're holding the the first two guys, and so that will become important later. But in the meantime, Robert Hayes confesses to Drusilla, "Listen, man, I'm not a war hero. I actually was going to give myself up." But the Nazis I ran into gave themselves up first. So I had to take them in.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. So he looks like a hero, but he would rather stay in what he called a nice, safe prison camp than keep fighting the war. So he's in his eyes, and in reality, he's not actually a war hero. But one of the things that this episode sort of touches on, but doesn't really explore, because I think this sort of thing happened a lot where heroism is sort of blown up for purposes of propaganda, you know,
Yes. Yeah.
like, if we had more time in this episode, Steve would probably tell this guy, you know what? What's important is that people think you're a hero, because that will inspire them and it will help win the war. Because like propaganda is a weapon just like anything else. And so I think it's interesting that, and at least that's our mentality now, I think, is that people know and understand that there's a certain level of propaganda that comes with war, where, heroism and, sort of these inspiring things that happen in battle are really sort of, they're not quite reality. They're presented in such a way that inspires people, and they're usually one-sided, and it's not the whole story. The whole story is a lot more complicated and messy.
Mm.
And maybe that's something we started to learn in the Vietnam era, when actual footage came back to the States and people actually saw with their own eyes what was happening. And
I think even historically it's happened throughout the centuries in stories. I think nearly all of history is like built up heroes that are probably not as heroic as, so it's just a human thing.
Yeah. I think when he makes this confession, this may be the second scene where they're at a soda shop and she's like, I really love hot dogs.
Yes.
And maybe that stood out to me, not only because she's basically repeating a line, but also because does anybody really love hot dogs? I mean, they're okay. And
on the island so long. Yeah.
I mean,
delicacy.
Yeah, and I suppose it's how they're dressed up, because I do love a Chicago hot dog. I don't know if you have those different styles of hot dog, but there's a particular kind called a Chicago hot dog that I just love. So anyway, Steve and Robert Hayes are driving somewhere. They get some kind of tip, I think. And so they're heading somewhere in a car, and of course get kidnapped. Yes. Immediately by Kurt. They take them back to the submarine, and there's this great scene with the producer, who's now a Nazi, and he doesn't have to pretend anymore. And he talks to them and says, just behave yourselves and you'll be in Germany, and don't try to escape. And again, he has that sort of look like, I hate having to do this, and I've done terrible things, and just behave and we'll all get out of this. Like the reluctant villain. And so we learn, and the big thing that we learn, I'm sorry I skipped it. The big thing we learn at the kidnapping is that Robert Hayes is in on it. Like, Steve is able to subdue the two guys. He knocks one out of the way with his door. It's two guys that are doing this kidnapping. And then he goes to punch the other guy, but Robert Hayes grabs the gun of the guy that fell and draws it on Steve. And he's like, I'm sorry, Steve. And so he's got Steve, under the gun, literally.
Oh, wow, I'm gonna have to rewatch it. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, well, it's a brief thing that at first Robert Hayes seems like he's collaborating with the Nazis, but we learn in the very next scene in the submarine that the reason he is because his parents have been kidnapped, and the Nazis have his parents, and so he's like, you're not gonna harm my parents, right? And the producer Nazi guy says, well, yeah, they're on board and they're fine, and you can see them tomorrow.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah. And Steve looks at Robert Hayes with the most daggered eyes, like he's so mad at him. He's like, dude, you are not a war hero. You have betrayed us. Wow. And he can see that it's a good reason, but in Steve's eyes, there's never a good reason to betray your comrades,
Sure. Yeah.
And so, for him, that's just showing weakness. So anyway, Diana goes to this casting office and she encounters this wonderful woman played by June Whitley Taylor. She's credited as receptionist, but she looks to me like a person that's in charge of casting, like she knows what's going on.
Yeah.
And Diana comes in sort of as kind of a Hollywood rookie, and she's like, I'm looking for a blonde actress. Do you know she's Slinky? and the lady's like, there are hundreds of these girls that come in. Do you know anything about her? And she's like, no, she's Slinky. That's all I know.
Hello. Nothing today. Come back tomorrow. Oh, no, you don't understand. You see, I'm looking for an actress. Well, you came to the right place. Okay, she's 5'2", she's got blonde hair, blue eyes, and, Slinky. Slinky? Yeah, you know, she's Slinky. What's her name? Well, you see, that's the problem. I don't know her name. That's why I'm here. Hundreds of girls come through here every day. Well, all those girls, they do have pictures, right? Sure, but as I just said, there are hundreds of them. Well, you see, this is very important. I really have to find that girl.
There's a giant stack of resumes, and luckily, I don't think they have to go too far before they find Christopher Norris's. And the great thing, this is like one of the great things about these shows, is that like they can just use Christopher Norris's actual resume photo, like the photo that the actress uses, and just say, well, this is Gloria's resume photo, but it's really Christopher Norris's. It's with just somebody, with Gloria's name taped at the bottom.
Yeah.
So anyway, she finds her. She goes to where she's getting made up for something, because of course she was promised, a role by this producer. Which, if he's a Nazi, like, how does he have this? Well, I guess he's probably been here a while. All these Nazi agents, they've been here. They've been in the States, like, burrowing in and, building their influence and all that stuff. So anyway, she's getting made up. Wonder Woman is not fooling around. She puts her lasso of truth on her right away, and she's like, what do you know?
Nut. She says, "Are you some kind of nut or something?"
Yeah. She's like, why are you tying me up? What's going on?
Yeah.
So anyway, Linda gets a lead on, because she's trying to figure out, like, where could they possibly be, and at first, Gloria doesn't know, but then she says, well, this producer does have a hold on a certain studio. And you see this after the previous scene, after the producer has talked to them. This was the other big surprise that I loved and did not see coming, actually. Right. That they're not in a submarine at all. They're on a movie set.
Yeah.
And I'm not exactly sure. I guess, it's unlikely that they have a submarine parked so close to Hollywood. So, because that's the Pacific Ocean. That's like not their territory. Although I guess, they're buddies with the Japanese, so they could get over there somehow. But anyway, I thought it was a pleasant surprise that it was just a movie set.
Right.
Because it's Hollywood. They can fake that kind of thing, It's just another way of sort of showing off Hollywood. So anyway, after Wonder Woman gets that info from Gloria, she grabs Debra Winger, and they, bust down the first you see them together, they bust down this door, the studio door, which was apparently locked, so they had to break it down, and they go in and find the submarine set, but nobody's there. So the guys are being taken away. And so they figure they're probably at the producer's house, right? And so there's this great shot of the two of them running together.
Yes. The two of them running down the street in heels.
Yeah.
I think after then, that's when they introduced the flat shoes for Linda Carter, when she used to run to do some action scenes. But that's an amazing scene. It's so much fun seeing the two of them running together.
Yeah. And so they get there just in time. They're about to load up, all four actors, or I'm sorry, all four heroes into another truck. They pull up with a Warner Brothers truck, which is, another little, advantage of being a real studio. They can just use the studio stuff. So they've got a Warner Brothers truck and they're going to move them into a different truck. And so Wonder Woman and Wonder Girl get there just in time to fight them. And the fight leads inside because Robert Hayes, he's concerned about his parents. And so
that is a very cool fight scene between the two of them. You actually see Wonder Girl doing a little bit more. Wonder Woman disappears behind the van, and you see Wonder Girl actually throw a few guys around. So that was pretty cool. That was quite fun. And then they go into the building. Yeah.
And it may have been my imagination, but it seems like Wonder Girl is a lot more aggressive than Wonder Woman. like her throwing around Nazis is a little more aggressive. Like she really knocked them,
Yeah.
maybe that was just my imagination, but I thought, she doesn't have the restraint that Diana has. Princess Diana is a little more compassionate, whereas Drew is a teenager, a 200-year-old teenager. But anyway, so they get inside and Wonder Woman's kind of working her way around to help the where the parents are and where Robert Hayes is, and Bremer, the producer Nazi, takes a shot at Wonder Woman, and it looks like he got her in the shoulder, which is like, how did he manage that? Like, where were her bracelets? What's going on? And Drew comes in, and she's ready for action, and Robert Hayes stands up to this producer. He's like, I'm not going to be your patsy anymore, or whatever. And so the producer just, this sad man who's had to kill so many people, who I'm making up all this backstory of his, but he reluctantly decides to shoot Robert Hayes at point blank range, right? And so, but Drew jumps in there and hits the bullet with her bracelet. And so the Nazi again looks a little bit sad, like, well, I'm glad the guy will live, but I guess I have to run. And so he goes. And so he runs out the door, and Drew goes to help Wonder Woman, and she pulls her out outside. And in the meantime, I believe Lyle Wagner goes after the producer. But then we find out outside that Wonder Woman didn't get shot at all.
Well, you're not hurt.
No.
So why did you make...
After what you told me about Jim, I wanted to give him a chance to prove himself.
And he did, didn't he?
Yes, he certainly did.
So he did have the opportunity, because of that shot, he had the opportunity to stand up to that Nazi. And so we see that same kind of trust. They get the Nazis, and Steve hands him the gun, hands it to Robert Hayes, and says,
"Nice work, soldier. It's exactly what one would expect from a brave man."
Thanks, Major. And thank those two women.
Which is wonderful.
Good. Yeah. It was a good on Diana's part. Yeah.
And that's it. That wraps it up. The final scene, they're looking at the completed movie, and we have to imagine it, because I guess what they did was they got a new producer, and the director finally found his megaphone, and so everybody completed the movie. And so they're watching it, and Drew is still there, and so they're glad the movie's done, and Drew's like, let's get some ice cream and hot dogs.
Of course.
How long will you be gone?
Oh, 3 or 4 days. A celebration at home.
Birthday?
No, an anniversary.
Well, at least we can all have dinner together before we go our separate ways.
Hot dogs and ice cream?
Whatever you want. General, there's one thing I regret, and that's that Wonder Woman and Wonder Girl weren't in the picture. They're the real stars.
Superstars.
Did I ever tell you about the time that Wonder Woman saved me?
4 times, Major.
All right, come on, you two. You want to hear about the exploits of Wonder Woman, don't you?
I certainly don't. Why not? You might grow up to be just like her someday. Who knows?
And she gives that trademark smile, and that's the end. The end.
It's very sad. I mean, when you think that was the last episode, but it was a great episode. I think that's a standout episode because it had a little bit of everything. It was a really good episode.
Yeah.
Everyone pretty much shone in that episode, so it was really good.
Yeah, I agree. It was a lot of fun, and it was also, it was fun for me because I didn't remember seeing it, and I didn't know what to expect. Wonder Woman in Hollywood. My gosh, what's that going to be? And it turned out great. It, like you said, it had a little bit of everything. It has, all the Hollywood magic and the sets and the casting office and everything. And it also had evil Nazis and, everything. And it was all there.
It was a fun episode.
So Renny, I want to talk to you about the fabulous Wonder Mama. I want to hear all about it from the beginning. Sir, tell me.
I started Wonder Mama. Next year, 2025, will be 10 years of Wonder Mama. Wow. So I first appeared at Sydney Mardi Gras Parade, which is our LGBT pride parade that happens every February, March, every year. So about 10 years ago, I decided I'm going to go as this big over-the-top Wonder Woman. The costume was terrible. The makeup was horrible. It was my first time doing it. It was just a disaster. And it actually took me a very long time to improve her. But yeah, so I appeared there. I was in the parade. I marched on my own with my nephew, walking with me. He's grown up. He's not we're very close in age. But from that point on, it just gained momentum. I started doing stuff in the community, different fundraisers and that sort of thing. Now, in the last few years, at the start of COVID, because I used to be a graphic designer. So I was a graphic designer for about 20 years, if not a bit longer than that. Then I gave it up because I got sick of it. So then what I decided to do was I wanted to host like a drink and draw class. So it was like, I don't know if you have them, if they're big in the States over there. It's like a sip and paint class.
Yeah.
I actually started hosting them like Zoom classes during COVID. And the goal was to do them as in-person classes. So I actually do quite a few of those now. So I'm actually doing Wonder Mama, hosting these drink and draw classes. We do artworks and that sort of thing. And so it's been pretty fun. And so that's pretty much, I do charity works. Now I'm doing live singing. So I do like some events that I actually sing live and that sort of thing. So it's been pretty good. It's been a lot of fun. It's been a journey with Wonder Mama. She's,
Awesome. So now before that first time, had you been doing drag before that?
No, I had not done drag. Well, I'd done drag as a kid before I even knew what drag was. So when I was a Wonder Woman fan, when I was a little kid, I was always wanting to dress up as Wonder Woman and whatever. But I was always a chubby kid, so I could never find a costume that fit me. But I was always doing weird, doing drag without even realizing what I was doing. Like I went to school character day as Rapunzel. My mum made me the costume. She had no idea what she was doing. She didn't know what she was in for. It was a lot of fun. It was just like silly things as a kid that I had no idea, but I was just in my own. And as a result, Stan, I've actually published about 3 not kids story books. They're self-published books. So I've got 2 Wonder Mama adventures, and I've got another one called It's Okay to Be Me. So It's Okay to Be Me is basically about what I went through as a kid, just being different. It's not about gender or sexuality. It was just a little boy that loved playing with dolls and loved superheroes and dress-ups and that sort of thing. So I wrote and illustrated those books. They actually started off as COVID projects while we were in lockdown, and I self-published them or did fundraisers for those and that sort of thing. So yeah, so that's pretty much but yeah, no, I don't know. I actually had a conversation with someone else about it, and I don't know, because I grew up in a sort of like a bit of a, not conservative, but they were a little bit, it's a traditional Italian family. So, yeah, being gay was a little bit not, looked on that great. So I was probably always a little bit scared to be openly in drag and that sort of thing. But yeah, I did that in my later years. Yeah.
Okay.
Now that I'm dressing up as an over-the-top superhero.
Well, I want to say this without, I don't know. I might sound, I might edit this out because I might sound like an idiot. But I want to, I want to explain that when I first started this,
Yes.
I had been to like SC Comic-Con. I'd been to a couple of different Comic-Cons, and I always try to get my picture taken with any Wonder Woman cosplayer.
Right.
And there was a guy there who had a Wonder Woman outfit on and a messy wig sort of thrown on, and he had this hairy chest. And my buddy Jack, who I was there with, we were called the Real Guys. What's that?
Was it Wonder Bear?
No. This was
right.
I could tell that this was somebody who had just thrown on the costume.
Okay.
And my friend said, well, are you going to get your picture taken with that guy? And I'm like, no, man. And he's like, do you have something against drag? And I said, that's not drag. Like, I don't know that I really know that, because like I'm the last person who would know anything about drag. But I'm like, he doesn't respect the costume. That's all I can really articulate. Like, I don't trust that he respects who Wonder Woman is. I think he looks like a frat boy who threw on a cheerleader costume to make fun of people.
And I felt a bit like that. I felt a bit like that originally when I first did Wonder Mama, because and that's why I changed her name. I didn't want her to be Wonder Woman. I wanted her to be Wonder Mama, because even back then, Stan, I was actually quite overweight. So I was quite a big Wonder Woman. And looking back now, I cringe at the way I, costumed her and made her look and whatever. And even back then, I didn't even consider it drag. I considered it sort of like costume. I didn't consider myself a drag queen. I didn't consider myself to that level. Like, especially with my makeup, it was terrible. Like, it's in the last probably 5 or 6 years that I've really improved things and changed things with Wonder Mama and made her costume a lot better. And I mean, I'm not trying to be Linda. I'll never get away with that, trying to be Linda Carter, but it's just my spin on a Wonder Woman. On a version of. Yeah.
And what I wanted to say was when I saw, I felt when I said that, like maybe I wasn't being fair to that guy, but I don't get the right vibe from him for some reason. But when I saw Wonder Mama, when I saw your Instagram and some of your videos, I instantly was in love with that character. And I'm like, that is a person who understands who Wonder Woman is. Like,
exactly.
Yeah, like your vibe is completely different, and it's because it has to do with the sort of love and taking care of the underdog and inspiring people, like all these things that I think Linda Carter's Wonder Woman stands for. Like, you have it perfectly,
Right. Oh, thank you.
And so it's a completely different thing, and so like, even though I feel like I'm completely unqualified to understand, I should never be like somebody who says,
I know the type of person you're talking about. I actually don't mind seeing people like that, because I think for a guy to go around dressed up in that even if they're not doing the full drag. I think it's pretty brave of them in a way. Like there was a convention probably about a year ago here in Sydney, and a guy turned up. He was actually a muscly guy with an amazing physique, and he was wearing a Wonder Woman dress with a wig and a little cape thing. And I got a photo with him because I thought, that's quite. And I was dressed as Wonder Mama, and I if I see Wonder Women, I'll get a photo, no matter how whatever level they are, whatever even if it's just a casual costume, or some of them are the more high end cosplayers. But yeah, no, I don't mind. I don't mind it. Yeah, as long as it's not sleazy or doing something awful, yeah.
Right.
But yeah, like in my early days, I look back now and go, oh my God, what did I do? But now I'm happy with the way Wonder Mama is, and yeah.
Well, I have to say, I'm learning from you that I think in a way I was being a little judgmental, like everybody should have the opportunity to dress how they want. If they want to portray Wonder Woman, even if sometimes maybe going this sort of over masculine frat boy way of doing it is a way to do it safely, maybe with a little less risk.
Yes. That might be the way. That might be the way they can pull it off. Maybe that's the only way they think they can do it. But you know what? Even Wonder Mama doesn't appeal to everyone. A lot of people do. Some people don't like what I do. Even Wonder Woman fans. There's some that don't like. They look at it as as blasphemy of Wonder Woman or something. But I still love it. I don't. Yeah, I try to keep it fun and try to keep it inspiring and stuff. So yeah, I try to keep it.
Yeah, and I mean, Linda Carter especially is a huge proponent of LGBTQ rights and exactly. And she's I think she appreciates, understands, and embraces all that culture.
Well, that's the other thing I forgot to mention, Stan. I actually run a Wonder Woman fan page on Facebook called Wonder Woman Everything Fans.
Oh.
We actually started that page. It's been running probably since around 2016. We actually started it as a Gal Gadot page when she got announced as Wonder Woman. But now, because that's all fizzled out sort of thing, and Gal's probably not going to be we don't think is going to be Wonder Woman again, I've changed it into a fan page, just everything Wonder Woman. And you know what? It's grown like crazy just in the last couple of months since we've been posting all different versions of Wonder Woman, like Linda and even the Kathy Lee Crosby and, some Gal Gadot stuff. And then also some of the Adrian Palicki stuff from that pilot that never got, never aired and that sort of thing, and Super Friends, all that sort of stuff. And it's funny, and I've posted some LGBT stuff on that page, and there's been haters coming onto the page. And I said, well, if you're a fan of Linda, you will know that she's a big supporter of the LGBT community. And a lot of people don't know that. They don't care. But there's a lot of horrible stuff going on in the world at the moment. So, there's a lot of bad rhetoric and that sort of stuff happening. So,
yeah.
I try to keep it inspiring, try to keep it fun, and and I think Wonder Mum is also family friendly. When I do my drawing classes, those are for adults, so those are totally different. Those ones we joke around, because a lot of the time it's bachelorette parties that do these groups. But we have a bit of fun. But when it comes to Wonder Mum, I'll do I have photos with kids and stuff. There's nothing scary about Wonder Mama, so she's fine. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, I love what you do, and I think I love your videos.
Hello, Glamazons. I am the fabulous Wonder Mama. Welcome to my website, the home of Sydney's very own superhero drag queen. Have a browse around. Here you can book one of my fabulous 5-star rated drawing classes, my amazing walking tours, or you can even buy one of my self-published books. Join me on my many adventures as I travel the globe, bringing peace, love, and equality to all. Mwah!
As I was afraid, I forgot to hit record. we had a great ending for this podcast. that only Renny and I know exists. So, but we're going to try to talk about it again. I think the first thing we talked about was the fact that the positivity that I feel when I see your Instagram, your videos, that's exactly the kind of positivity that Linda Carter herself, emulated in, doing the character and in her real life, when she, embraces everything that has to do with LGBTQ culture. And so that's one of the wonderful things about Wonder Mama. So one of the things I believe I asked you a moment ago when I wasn't recording is, are there moments where you feel like, like you are really, you get sort of the feedback that you're inspiring people, that people are grateful for what you do. They see the fabulous Wonder Mama and they're like, I love that you're doing this. Do you get that kind of feedback?
Totally. So it happens so often. I mean, either it's through social media, depending on what I post on social media, but then the fun comes when, I'll appear at a live event, at a convention. I go to conventions here in Sydney and Australia to sell my books and merch and that sort of thing and promote my drink and draw. And people are just happy to see you when you're in this fabulous, outrageous costume and stuff like that. Especially sometimes if you're in the author section, everyone's very quiet and sitting behind their desk like you're in a library. And I'm there in this ridiculous costume. And but yeah, no, it happens a lot. And I think Wonder Mama appeals to a whole lot of different ages. I've got kids and I've got adults and grown-ups that, are happy to, when I'm, I might be out in public doing a photo shoot or something and people say, oh, you look fabulous and, we love what you do and that sort of thing. So, yeah, no, it happens a lot and it's really, and it makes me feel really happy. So it's really good. Yeah. It's really good.
And you had mentioned that one of the times you were in New York, I think the last time, you wound up by yourself walking through New York.
Yes. Well, New York Comic Con was amazing. So I only bought like a 2-day ticket for New York. I thought, oh, that'll be enough. And it was not enough because New York Comic Con is just massive. I didn't even have a chance to see everything. Next time. But I had booked a photography shoot with an Airbnb photographer at Times Square, and my friend was meant to walk with me. I said, can you please come with me from Javits Center to Times Square so I can do this photo shoot? I don't want to walk on my own. And then at the last minute, her photos with her celebrities were running late, so she couldn't come with me. And I was like, oh, my God. So I had to walk, I don't know what it was, like 8 or 9 blocks from Javits Center to Times Square on my own, just dressed in this costume, thinking I was going to get stabbed to death or something. But yeah, I made it to Times Square, did the photo shoot. I got a lot of strange looks, but it went fabulous and the photos are amazing. And so that was a lot of fun. Yeah. And it was really positive, especially in the environment of the convention. Like, I got so many photos and video with people and everyone was really happy to see me. And like I said to you earlier, a lot of people were surprised that I was from Australia. They thought I'd be American, being in the Wonder Woman costume. And I said, no, I'm here on holidays. And yeah. So it was just, it was great fun. It was really, really good. But yeah, I mean, I think I try to keep Wonder Mama as a positive character, a happy character and stuff. So yeah, it's, that's just how she's developed. So yeah, so it's been pretty good.
Awesome. Well, I love the fabulous Wonder Mama. I love what you do. I'm so glad you're doing it. I think it's great. So Renny, thank you so much for being here. And you, when people want to look for you on the internet, where's the best place to go?
Fabulous Wonder Mama is on Instagram. She's on my website. She's on Facebook. So it's just Fabulous Wonder Mama, MAMA. So it's just it'll come up. It just comes up.
Yeah. All right. You're very searchable. Okay.
Yes. I made sure because when I named her Wonder Mama, I Googled Wonder Mama and a Chinese restaurant came up. So I thought I better put the fabulous at the front of that because I don't want to be a Chinese restaurant. I had to add the fabulous, not because I'm feeling, that I'm so fabulous, but because I had to change the name because, there's like a Chinese or Malaysian restaurant out there in the world called Wonder Mama. So, yeah.
All right. Well, thank you so much for giving us your time. We really appreciate it.
No worries. Thanks for having me.
All right. Take care.
Thank you. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Renny, aka Wonder Mama. You are an inspiration and a fabulous reminder of all Wonder Woman stands for. Please give Wonder Mama some love. You can find her links in the show notes at WonderWomanWednesdays.com. Also, you heard me mention my guest appearance on Eventually Supertrain as Dan Budnick and I review Partners in Crime with Linda Carter and Lonnie Anderson. Remember, Wonder Woman in Hollywood was the episode that started their friendship and made Partners in Crime possible. Now at press time, Dan and I are still at it. We've got just 2 more episodes, I think, to cover in the 12-episode series, so check it out. Also, speaking of podcasts, Satin Tights, the premier Wonder Woman TV show podcast, has finally dropped their episode covering Wonder Woman Episode 2, Baroness von Gunther, and man is it fantastic. A detailed and entertaining analysis with a discussion at the end about the original script that positively blew my mind. Now you can find links to Satin Tights and Eventually Supertrain at WonderWomanWednesdays.com. And now, my friends, as we hinted at in the last episode with my buddy Sean McHugh, I am happy to let you know that our next episode will feature a special interview with the very first live-action television Wonder Woman, Ellie Wood Walker. She is fascinating, she's wonderful, and she will be our guest next month. Until then, my friends, be kind whenever possible. It is always possible.